Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Small Business Show. My name is Swire Ho. You can also call me the promo guy. My guest today is Molly Rowland, CEO and founder of Heartcast Media. Heartcast Media is a digital content agency focused on content marketing for founders, CEOs, coaches, and brands. Molly specializes in producing high quality branded video for businesses that want to generate revenue and create strategic relationships through content marketing. Molly is a frequent speaker about the business of podcasting, marketing, and content creation. She believes that listening is a revolution, and it is evident the work that she produced and multiple podcasts in the top 10 downloads. Molly currently lives in Costa Rica with her 4 dogs and runs her business remotely. How you doing, Molly?
I'm good. How you doing, Swire?
I'm good. So, Molly,
Excellent.
it looks like you're living the life here, running a business and doing the work that you like to do. I'd love to find out more about how did you get into content creation and what do you like most about it?
For sure. Well, I've been in multimedia for 23 years now, so it came very naturally to me. I've done a lot of marketing and branding and production over the last, couple of decades now. And so about 4 years ago, I formed Heartcast Media to really focus on helping businesses and brands create content that's more sustainable because it's more affordable and also more effective than the typical like brand video and things that a lot of corporations and companies think about when they think about using video. They think about these huge expensive projects that didn't net them any results versus how to use video, branded podcasting, video content to really boost your business through SEO, through strategic relationships, through content marketing, having assets for your calendar, and getting that all under one roof in a way that's leveraging your time in a smart way.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that you're the perfect person to answer this question. You touched on some of it, and I wanted to really get your take on content marketing because, like you said, you know, brands could spend millions, right, just to maybe buy a Super Bowl ad. But some of us tune out. Like when ever watch YouTube video, there's a video, I don't care who it's from. As soon as I can skip, I skip it. However, when I watch short videos or sometimes on Instagram, they're not professionally made video, but I spend a lot of time, watching those videos. And sometimes I have had made my decision based on those videos. Can you touch on those and how do you see the industry is changing now, especially for a small business to be able to take advantage of this?
Well, I think it's a really important thing to understand that in this age of AI, authentic content is going to be really important because you can put a few prompts in and create a beautiful image and all this amazing content. But nothing's going to ever replace you being the face of your brand or people or having a podcast. You can't recreate Swire through AI. Like sure with the script maybe you could fake some lines of script or something along the lines, but nobody you couldn't you know nothing's going to replace us having the conversation we had and us having the conversation we're having now, right? So it's all about creating authentic content that really matches who you are so you can speak to your audience of people who, and I think audience is almost a little too broad. It's like you're the people you want to work with,
Mhm.
right? And maybe focus less on the audience and focus more on creating content that's going to reach the people that you actually want to do business with.
So walk me through the process. Let's say you have a potential client coming on board. Like, do you help them to find out who they should talk to? Because I feel like when brand wanted to get the message across, they want to target everyone and end up they're not reaching nobody.
Well, we really focus on branded podcasting. That's our number one tool for business development, right? And so we have a very different aspect on that. And so our clients will come to us and say, or a new client will say, we want to have a podcast and we want to do entrepreneurial stories. And I'll say, okay, well, why? What is the point of, what's the why? What does success look like? What is the goal? Because you can't kick the ball through the goalpost if you don't know where it is, right? You got to
Mm.
make sure you're kicking the ball in the right direction. So that's the first thing. What does success actually look like? And then we start to reverse engineer. Well, maybe you don't want to do entrepreneur stories. Maybe you just want to do 12 podcasts this year and identify 12 people that you want to do business with and focus more on the guest and less of the audience, and get really clear on what's the point of having those conversations. What are you aiming to get out of it? And then really focusing on amplification of that, and focusing on those relationships that can actually move the needle in your business. And so, if you don't really know who you're talking to, that's a good place to start, because you can generate a whole lot of ROI and figure, and then you have room to do additional advertising. You have room to do additional things. However, I feel like in life, it's anything. Getting what you want is easy. Knowing what you want is the hard part, right? So who do you want to work with? And I think we get caught up in like, well, go on TikTok and get all this visibility and get a lead funnel. I don't want every single person to have the ability to work with me. That's not it. I know that the quality of my life and the success of my company is 150% related to the quality of the customer, my client relationships. We don't want to work with everybody. We want to work with people that are going to work well for us. So I think that is the right answer, is who do you want to spend your time with? Because sometimes your clients, you spend more time with you might talk to your clients when you talk to your friends.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good point, and I recall an experience I had with a fitness influencer. He is very famous on Instagram. He actually has a lot of followers, but he told me that he is struggling to find business for his training business. I was wondering why you have all these followers, but he told me that yeah, these people follow me, they like, they comment, but none of those are my client. My clients are actually a different group, and I was surprised, because you're getting the likes and you're getting the shares on online, but they're not paying customers.
Well, and a lot of people get trapped with a podcast and they think, well, we want to create thought leadership and we want to be known and we want to be
Mm.
on new and noteworthy on Apple. Well, if you get 1 million downloads, what does that actually get you? You can't even communicate with that audience without recording another podcast. You really want to dial in my opinion, on the guest and not on the audience as much if you're trying to do business development. And really, it's like, well, if you want to be famous, that's one thing. If you want to get more clients, it's a whole different thing. Those are very different objectives. You know what I mean? Very different objectives. And those numbers don't always mean discovery calls. I have a client who got on TikTok, grew to 5,000 followers in a month, had a couple videos with over 1 million hits, 0 discovery calls.
Mm. So what would you like us to do? Am I right by saying, for example, if you have, a business, then you actually invite your prospect to be on as a guest? Is that the relationship? If you could make this work for them to be on the podcast, to be worthwhile to having actually a podcast?
Absolutely, because if you think about, and you understand better than anybody, a podcast is expensive. It's expensive in time or effort or paying somebody to make up for those things if you're not doing it yourself, right? It's not a cheap prospect. And so if you're looking for volume, then doing a consistent podcast over and over and over again, like you're doing live, you're getting visibility, you're consistently showing up. That's one thing, right? For people who don't have that kind of bandwidth, right, or don't have as much to talk about, like maybe a company that is really trying to expand their reach and their sales, their client base, right? But it's CEOs and founders, and they can't do it. They couldn't do a weekly podcast. They can't do weekly meetings. Never mind a weekly podcast. It's not realistic. It's not sustainable. So it's better to identify 12 guests, right? And they talk a lot about like the dream 100 list, right? Identify 100 people, and it's like Bill Gates. No. Who are 12 people that could like who you want to do business with, or that could bring you more business, right? Like if you're, a bricklayer, you could go to the Bricklayers Association and interview somebody there because they know a bunch of people always looking for bricklayers, right? Like you got to think creatively and really focus on that guest and focus on the relationship, because everything in life is relationships. The quality of your life is based on your relationships. The quality of your business is based on the relationships with your clients, So create the relationship, do an interview with somebody and do the best introduction you've ever done. Make it last 2 minutes, pull cool things about them that they didn't even remember themselves. Impress them with the introduction, and then do a thoughtful, intelligent, passionate interview about the things that you both like. No sales, No talking about you, listening and answering questions. And 2 days later, that's when you go for the ask. Hey, Tom, thanks for coming on my show. I would love it if you would be on my board of directors, if I could get an introduction, if you would be willing to have a meeting with me, whatever it is, right? Sometimes you don't even have an ask. If you know you're going to pitch a really big company, why not interview somebody else in the company? So that way you're already a warm name, a warm company recognition. You're not a cold prospect coming in. You're somebody who's given something to that company already, given something to that person already. They're going to be more inclined to want to give you something back, and you create a relationship. And you might, in that conversation, realize you don't want to work with that person, or you might really hit it off and realize, yeah, this is great. And then they're going to want to work with you.
A lot of good point there. Can I ask you a self-interest questions?
Sure.
Kind of relate to podcasting, but you get me really thinking. And I think it's also speaks on some of the small business owner out there who have their own podcast. For example, I know who my top 10 clients are. I work with them. They do a lot of repeat business with me. And the small business show is not about my business, right? I'm in the promotional product industry, and none of that says from the show. I would like to have them on the show, not to talk about my product. It's not going to be salesy, but rather how it makes them successful in the business, like what drives them to be where they are. Kind of like the guests, the conversation that we have on the show. But I'm having a hard time for them to be on the show because, you and I know why we need to guest on podcasts. We do that all the time, you and I. But for people who are not guests on the podcast before, I think it's sometimes overwhelming and sometimes it's scary, right? For people who haven't been on and talk about themselves for 30, 45 minutes. It's scary, right? If you've never been on. Like, how would you guide us or me to encourage those clients to be on and obviously to build on that relationship? And obviously, I will make them look good. I'll do sound bites. I'll do write up, things like that. So that's beneficial for them too, for the PR purpose, for the awareness piece. So how would you advise for people who might not be motivated to be on a guest on a podcast?
Well, I would first ask what their biggest pain points are. And maybe it's they don't see themselves as a small business. And so that's why they don't want to be on the show. Or maybe they're just really not comfortable with it. Or maybe somebody else in the company could do it, right? Like, hey, if you don't want to do it, can I interview your assistant? Or I mean, it's like a company spotlight, But in that case, that's really more like client retention more so than anything, right? Because you want to like give them love. But at the end of the day, if they're not really into it, then I wouldn't really force them to. But as far as client prospecting, there's always somebody in that company who will be willing to talk to you, especially if you're going after bigger contracts. There could be a PR person, there's a representative, talk to so-and-so. They do all the podcasts for the company, Or the flip side, there'll be a lot of people who say, oh, nobody ever wants me to talk about myself. I would love to, right? Maybe easing people's concerns by giving them all your questions in advance so they know that they're not going to get blindsided by like some political stuff or.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a scary person. I'm nice, and I think you're right. Like if you talk to the right person, each company have a more outgoing person. Or if I ask a salesperson to come on, they can talk about their stuff for like hours. So
all day,
and I
salesperson.
think for good prospecting, the approach is to highlight you, is to spotlight you. Maybe that you have a mission, right, for the company. I would love to showcase that. So that makes a good introduction. And maybe if you're reaching maybe to the C-level executive, they might have a slot for you for 30 minutes where normally you can't get them on the phone, never.
Exactly. Yeah, and submitting your questions in advance, showing what it'll look like. Here's the time I'm gonna take, But yeah, there's always somebody if you ask the right person.
Yeah. So let me ask you this bigger question. I think you mentioned some of it, right? For the prospecting part, for the brand awareness part. So how can a podcast generate revenue in any business? So that's a really big statement, right?
Well, it really dials back to the 12 most important people that can move the needle in your business. That's number one. There's 3 different like facets to a branded podcast, right? And so if you're just focused on the visibility, you can get that any way you want. But if you focus on the 12 people, you've got 12 interviews and you've got relationships that you're forming. The other side to that is now you've got 12 interviews that you can turn in that are podcasts, that can your YouTube videos, second largest search engine in the world. You're basically getting a ton of SEO value. All the you can make blog posts for each one of those episodes and put it on your website. That's SEO data. That's like, domain authority right there. Then you've got metadata. You've got all this information that's attached to the podcast. So that's more SEO value. You're creating now the third element is you're creating social media assets for that. You've got from that one, or 12 interviews, you could make, 3 different graphics and 3 different small videos from each one of those. Now you've got, 100 different pieces of content to now fill your content calendar with, right? And then the fourth element of that is you've got social proof now. Now you can tag and say, hey, Swire Hill had me on his podcast and it was super cool. We had this great conversation about whatever. Now I've got social proof and validation for my LinkedIn account. So really, it's like what part of the train do you want to get on? Because if you start from the business development angle, then you still get all the assets, you still get the thought leadership, you still get the visibility, and you still get the SEO and the social media proof, right? But you're starting from a place of being very, very strategic about who you're interviewing and why, right? And then if you elevate those assets in a smart way, like putting ads on different things and putting a little money behind different things, then it can reach more people. So it really is a great way to like knock out SEO, fill your content calendar, and forge strategic relationships with people who can make your business really thrive.
I think there's a lot of good point in there because when you watch TikTok video or if you watch short form video, less than 30 seconds, but they spend hours editing it. So if you're not in front of a camera to talk for hours, it's hard to get those done. But with the interview that Molly mentioned, all you have to do is do the scheduling, obviously going back and forth a little bit, maybe submit your question, and then you lock them in place so you can actually block out a lot of the content creation that you have for the year. And you're talking to your ideal client, and then how you
Exactly.
spin it depending on what department that you wanted to reach out afterwards can be a good introduction. I talked to the CEO already. He mentioned that you guys have this pain point. Can you talk more about that? Then it could lead on to multiple conversation after because the CEO says that. You probably know about it, right?
Exactly. And you're in. And then if you are thorough, like to me, there's 3 pillars of any like content marketing plan, and that's the strategy, production, and amplification. Strategy. What does success look like? Who are you talking to and why? How many episodes are you going to do? How long are they going to be? Like a real strategy. How many assets are you going to make for each one? How are you going to post them? What is the metric for success? Strategy, a real clear strategy, right? Do you post all 12 episodes at once? Do you post them once a month? Do you do them once a week for 4 months? Like, what is the strategy, right? Then the second arm is production. If you're representing your business with your podcast and you've done a great job of this, it needs to look good. Like your show looks good. You got a nice graphic in the back.
Thank you.
Everything is consistent orange. It looks good, and because you're representing yourself and your business and you understand it needs to look good, right? You got a microphone. You're doing what you're supposed to do. So if you're going to have a podcast for your business, it has to look good. I always recommend outsourcing, or if you're savvy yourself, that's great. But if you're not, then outsource it. And get a professional to produce your content if you're representing your business. The third arm of that is the amplification. And that's where a lot of people go off the rails. Once somebody's been on your podcast, that's a great time. You've created a runway now. Now you got to follow up with them. Hey, Tom, thanks for being on my show. Here's 3 graphics. Here's a little video clip you can link. I'll be tagging you on LinkedIn on the next few days. Keep an eye out for those posts. By the way, I'd love to get virtual coffee with you. Here's my meeting link. Let's do that kind of thing. Like really creating and the amplification isn't always social media. It's the amplification of that relationship. That's what's going to really move the needle. Being able to post it on social media and getting the SEO value is just like helping out your marketing team or yourself, depending on the size of your business. But the amplification is really with the relationship, not getting 100 views on Apple.
It would be nice to have, right? They give you kind of like the ego sometime. You feel like, oh, I have this person on as my guest, and now a lot of people watching it. But when you're talking to those points, I'm thinking about what can be done. Because a lot of people think about, they talk about drip campaign, right? They talk about social media posts. They talk about, the sales funnel, right? So you're actually using the podcast to open up your funnel to feed people into your way. Maybe you have that prospect on that you think will be great, but after you guys have the conversation, you know that they might not be a good fit. That could be it. Or what you're saying, Molly, is afterwards you can actually reach out. Hey, you talk about that during the show, and I'd love to find out more about that, and be genuine. And especially with LinkedIn, you could follow them. Now you can have a really purpose for connecting with them on LinkedIn or their favorite platform. Now you're following them and see what they're doing. Love to learn more about what you said on this. I noticed that you're passionate about that. Then you kind of build that relationship, and you now they see you not as a vendor. Now they see you as a advisor, or even someone that they could mastermind with. That could be another way to look at this.
Exactly. Because I think it's like, I don't know. I've read a lot of business books in the last few years. I decided to become a student in business, and I just went all in. And the biggest lessons or the biggest takeaway that I think that I took from all of them, and there's a lot about, leadership and personal development, but when it comes to business, is take the straightest path to the money. And I think that why not why not try to interview the people you want to do business with, and then maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you still get all that content anyway. Instead of trying to create the content, reach the masses, create a funnel them down to a smaller, why don't you just go straight to the people you want to do business with and interview them? And to me, that seems like the straightest path to the money, because I think this idea of a funnel is a little misleading, and there's like funnel hacking and all that. Yeah, sure, absolutely. That can work, but it dehumanizes all of us. I'm not a funnel particle, dude. I'm a person. You know what I mean? Like, don't just shimmy me into a plastic barrel and squeeze me into something else. That's not what I am. And the nurturing camp, it's a little impersonal. There is nothing more personal than sitting down and saying, Swire Ho was born here and lived here and did this, and his second grade teacher did this. But what he's most known for is the work he's done for the last 10. If you came on my show and I did an introduction like that, you would never forget me. And you would want to do business with me, or you would want to refer people to do you know what I mean? It's the gift of reciprocity. I think you're better off spending your time interviewing the people you want to do business with, or adjacent to those people, and start to make yourself known in that circle, and go straight to the people you want to do business with, and then get the benefits of the podcast at the same time.
Another way that I found, doing the small business show useful is I talk to my client. I know that they concern about certain topic, right? Some people care about their finances. Some people care about employees retention. Some people care about, trade show engagement. That then I know because I've talked to them. So now when I have guests on, you are also one of them, Molly. They care about content creation. So what I would do is when I edit this episode, I'll actually cut out snippets, or I will think about who in my contact list in my CRM cares about this type of topic, and I'll actually email them. So I would just interview a expert in this topic. And I know that you mentioned you care about this thing, and I'll actually send them the episode. People appreciate that. So they might not want to be my guest, but I know that they care about those content. So, and I'm feeding them what they're looking for.
And that's so personal, and that's so great. Hey, I saw this, made me think of you. I think you would find value in this. That's fantastic. And that's a great way to build those relationships. And it's personal. It's not, oh, hey, here's an email sequence. No, I thought about you specifically, And don't get me wrong. I think email sequences can be great and all, They can be I love good automation. I love Zapier and I love all that stuff. But not everything can be automated, right? Like we need to get back to relationships, and especially in business.
I think right now virtual relationship is explode for the past 2 years, because when I send them the video, all the branding is all around. I'm wearing the logo shirt, my stuff, subtly they will see it, and the more that they see me pop up, it keeps them top of mind. So with that, that would be, a lot of the content strategies that I could do comfortably. Because if you ask me to do a 5-minute talking head video, I'm stuck for the next 8 hours. But I can do this, and I could, I get to ask the question too. So that's the good part. And I know that what they care most about, and I'll actually have the expert on, and I'll ask the question on behalf of them. So they do see the relationship and why I'm having those guests on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant.
Can you talk about more? I love getting into more of the business development tools. Before that, can you touch on cost a little bit? I think people want to do it right. Uh, if they want to budget for it, so what is the normal range people should do if they think that having a podcast for business development tool could be another stream of revenue? Because throwing out to that, if you're buying Google ads, when you stop paying for those ads, you don't get anything. But if you do a podcast, if you spend some money into podcasting, it's your own content to keep, and you could spin it anywhere, any way that you like, really.
And you can repurpose that content a whole bunch of times. Like you can
Mhm.
post those things multiple times, or when something comes back up in the news cycle again that's relevant, or hot topic, you can repost that content again. So it's a very valid point. Um, I think paid advertising is always good, but it's like you said, as soon as it stops, it really stops. So it's kind of difficult. I'm sorry, what was the beginning of the question?
Well, how do we use podcasts as a business development tools, and what would be the range that you would advise people to consider
Consider.
for their marketing budget?
I would say there's a couple different aspects to this. You can hire somebody off of Fiverr or Upwork, which I really don't recommend. It's really like predatory and disrespectful to the creative community, but you can do that. You can hire podcast managers that can manage your whole thing for a few $100s a month. It won't be great. You can hire somebody that's going to charge you $600 to $1,000 an episode. It'll be good. And then you've got people that charge $1,500 to $2,500 an episode, and it'll probably be the same as the good people, but you're just going to pay a lot more for it. So that's kind of the higher end of things. It's The idea is come up with a number that you can comfortably budget for, and then leverage that time and all of that content to the best of your possible ability. So if you can only afford to do one podcast episode a month at, let's say, $6.50 an episode, just make sure you make like 5 different graphics out of it and get 5 different like social clip videos for reels and shorts and LinkedIn, and get as much supporting assets as you can for each episode, so that you could actually stretch it out and really get your bang for your buck on that one. So if you were trying to do it in-house, which a lot of people do, you're going to spend probably 3 times that, because it's going to take you longer. It's going to take you 5 times longer to edit something if you're not an audio engineer. It's going to take you 10 times longer to edit the video if you're not a video editor. Like, let people do what they're good at, including yourself, right? So it's really, I think, to identify a budget that you're comfortable with, but then also think about the ROI. You know what I mean? What is one client? If you get out of those 12 people, one client signs, how much money does that mean to you? And what percentage of that are you willing to spend to get that lead? Because every lead has a cost, one way or another.
Yeah, I like that analogy, and especially, let's say, for example, each episode costs $1,000, right? We're talking about the high end of it, so that's 12,000 a year. So depending on the business that you're in, you probably spend that much on ads and other creation already. And if you want to ask yourself, maybe only 1 out of 12 you get. What is the cost for the lifetime for that ideal client? Maybe they order millions. Maybe they offer tens of millions or even $100,000. So that would be 10% of your ROI. Like if you're into KPI, things like that. And then I think
Exactly.
as a good entrepreneur and a salesperson, right? So if you have company A to be on, it turns out that they have no need for your business. They're locked in for the next 10 years, for example. But now company B in the same industry can be your prospect. Then now you can use, I have company A CEO on, like I love the conversation, but I would also love to get your take on it. Now you're getting the ball rolling. Maybe it takes you 6 months to get the first client to be on because they keep saying no, no, no. But once you can show them that you have a certain guest to be on, then it gets easier. Do you see that way for when you work with clients?
Absolutely. And when the people that really understand it, and they get it, they make that list, they start reaching out. Usually with clients, when I actually sit and explain this to them, the you can see the lights are going on, the wheels are turning. They're already making their list. They already got like 6 people for the list. So it's really, it's like the one of my favorite quotes is, you can't read the label from inside the jar. And a lot of times people just need a mirror. They need somebody to help them read the label. And so that's what I do. I just, kind of guide people in a way, and then they're off to the races. They're going to come up with their 12, and then I help, really craft a strategy and plan on how to actually make that work. But it's true. You leverage them against each other. Oh, well, I got so and so on. All right. Oh, I'm going to come on. And I mean, that's a warm lead. You know what I mean? That's a great lead, especially if you follow up and you say, "Hey, it was great chatting with you. I'd love to be your ex provider, or or if there's any events I can attend or whatever," because it's all relationships, and that's how it is in business. It's like when you have a good and they're really happy with you, and they start making introductions for you. It's like, start from that place. Start from a place where they like you because you've been a human and you provided value in their life. And then they're going to want to do that for you.
Yeah, especially now you touched on the networking part. I think that's important. Supposedly you have the CEO on, right, for your ideal client. Maybe the CEO has don't want to work with you. But now you know that, I've been invited to other networking event for internal purpose that they invite me to be on because I have their top guy to be on. Now you can network with other departments, other individual within the same company. So you can look at that too. Like you can really go as deep as you want to. I think having the right ideal client to be on your guest, it's just a door opener. So you can actually now open the door because you already have that relationship and you have proof for it.
And especially like you talked about, you could get a client that's worth millions of dollars. Like I have a client that talks about geospatial satellite mapping, right? I listen to it. I'm like, what are they talking? This is not my thing, right? GitHub, all this cool stuff. It's super cool, right? But I don't know what they're talking about. But they got really big contracts out of that because,
Mm.
you know, it's a small community of people, a small group of interest. And don't you want to hire the people that are so passionate about the thing that they talk about it in their spare time? And then they also interviewed people that they want to do business with, and they got a $5 million contract out of it. So it's not about like how many downloads you get. It's like, if you think about, if you were trying to get a $5 million contract just on the strength of your podcast alone, not having the person on the podcast, just hoping they would hear it, the amount of money you would have to spend on paid advertising to put that podcast in so many places that somebody who's making $5 million contract decisions would be able to even find it and hear it. You would have to spend so much money on advertising to do that, or you could just interview them.
Mm. That's a really good point. And now you're not selling to them. I'm sure that if they talk about contract in that magnitude, a lot of people are surrounding them, wanting the business. But now you're getting over them because you let them talk about what they're passionate about. You let them talk about some of the pain point, what are their challenges are. So now you become an ally, right? You let them at their platform to talk about what they like to talk about. So I think, yeah, that's really smart way to do it.
And show up prepared. Like, do one hell of an introduction. Like, don't just read their bio. Like, do it like to where they're wondering, how did you get this much information about me? Read every book they've written. Go to their LinkedIn page. Read 6 months of their posts. Read their blogs. Read their articles. Like, really, hey, in 2006 you said this, but then in 2016 you said this. So now it's 8 years later. What do you think? They'll be like, you put time and effort into being prepared. You are bringing value and you're respecting my time. That's a great way to start a business relationship.
Yeah, that's really good information. And Molly, I think we're getting to the point that, listener might have individual questions. If they do, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Well, our website is great, heartcastmedia.com. You can also find me on, all of social media platforms, but on Heartcast Media, we have contact forms and a content assessment. If you're curious how your content marketing stacks, you can take our little assessment and get a personalized score and figure out where you're at. But yeah, LinkedIn, but the website is probably the best place.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on today, Molly. I learned a lot. You got me spinning. I need to start taking notes.
All right. Well, thank you. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. I really appreciate your time and for having me on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Molly.